Hampshire's first congressional district is one of the most competitive in the nation. But after redistricting, it's likely to have a more GOP lean. There's a growing list of ambitious politicians expressing interest in running in 2022. But a Marine Corps veteran who lives in Derry, new to politics entirely, is already in the race. This morning, we welcome Julian Aciard to Close Up. Julian, thanks for joining us.
How you doing today, sir?
So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you stand for, and why you're running for Congress.
So, as the flag says, and as you said, I'm a United States Marine, military police. I graduated out of Timberlane in Plastow, and I enjoyed my time there. I went active duty, and I was medically retired in 2011. I met my wife out there. I had my son on Camp Pendleton, and then right after having my daughter, we moved back home because, well, California is kind of a lost cause at this point. And I missed the live free or die spirit. But when I came back, something was different. And when I got back, I noticed that Nashua had fallen further down the hill, and same with Manchester. But over the past 12 years since I left and since I have come back, pretty much since 2000, I've noticed the political conversation in this country degrading at a much higher rate, to the point where we're all having completely different conversations and we're speaking past each other. And I see it as my job, if no one else is going to bring some sort of rational conversation back to the fold, it's my job to jump in and do it.
Julian, one of the defining aspects of what it means to be a Republican for office, or running for office these days, is how much allegiance you pledge to Donald Trump. So we know you supported him in the past, but what about in the future? Are you a Donald Trump supporter, and would you want him to run for president in 2024?
So as I said before, I voted for him twice. I take Donald Trump as a man. He's flawed. He gets things right. He gets things wrong. I agreed with a lot of his policies, and I disagreed with a lot of what he said. And frankly, the January 6th was something that I was definitely not happy about. But still, I supported his presidency. I liked having him as president. But in 2024, I would like to see Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis at the top of the ticket, and I'd like to see Trump as the kingmaker.
You mentioned January 6th there. What about the members of Congress? If you were in Congress on January 6th, would you have voted to accept the electoral votes that made Joe Biden president?
Yes. At that point, it was far gone. There's nothing, everything that everyone wanted to happen, it was pretty much a Hail Mary at that point. Whether you believe that the election was stolen or not, I believe that the rules were changed legally, and that changed the outcome of the election. And as much as I don't like it, and I'm not happy about it, and I wanted Donald Trump to win, at that point, there was no turning back. And there's absolutely no precedent for being able to flip the switch and turn back the clock. So I don't think that it was something that I think a lot of people were sort of grifting off the situation and trying to profit off of people's pain, and I wasn't happy about that.
The economy is recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic right now, but there's still a lot of uncertainty out there. You're a Republican, but you call yourself a solutionary. So what would be these solutionary ideas you're bringing to Washington when it comes to jobs in the economy?
Well, I have an economic revitalization plan. My proposal is actually take the corporate tax down to 15% and 12% for companies repatriating their operations and manufacturing back to the U.S. and locating those operations within economically distressed areas. So all those jobs that got shipped overseas decades ago, well, now they're back. And that also puts us at the most competitive place in pretty much the world market. There's very few countries that have their corporate rate down that low. Now, on the flip side, for the average individual, the income tax, I want to cut it down to a flat 10%. I want to make it really, really easy for people to file their taxes. You don't have to hire an accountant. You don't have to to torch your wallet just to file your taxes every year. I'd like to have everyone at a flat 10%. Those who are making $1 billion pay 10% of $1 billion. But I want to set that tax floor at $30,000. It was just above the poverty line for an individual. At $30,000, you'd pay nothing plus a $10,000 deductible per adult. So at $40,000 for a single individual, you're not paying a dollar. However, once you hit over $40,000, now you start to pay taxes. So this gives you time to be able to build up the equity in your own life so that you can build a future. You can actually invest. You can make more money. You can invest in your education, stuff like that. I don't want to tax a poor person who's making $10,000 a year, $1,000 on their 10 grand. That's insanity. And zero capital gains tax. Not to mention, I'd like to rewrite the tax code. There's a whole bunch of bunk in it. It's, almost 30,000 pages right now?
Well, clearly, for a political outsider, you've done some thinking on this front to begin with. So I do want to get to the conversation on racial justice. It seems to be bogged down right now in this debate over critical race theory. You have a lot of progressives and liberals coming forward right now saying, well, no one understands this, and the Republicans are just fighting critical race theory, and they don't even know what they're talking about. It's just being appropriated to stop the conversation and stop any reforms. What's your perspective on that?
Both sides have a valid argument. It's actually a combination of the two. So the right is being reactionary to what's being taught right now, which is actually critical race theory, which isn't new. It actually started a long time ago. And it's being sort of combined with the 1619 Project and white fragility movement that's going on. So when you combine all that together, that equals the cultural Marxism that everyone is complaining about, and I'm rightly complaining about as well. The critical race theory is a direct response to the legislation that was passed back in the 70s all the way through the 90s that were directly targeted at the black community, and how to discuss race and government and its infrastructure and how it hurts people. And as I said before, systemic racism is real. Systemic racism is real. It was built by Woodrow Wilson, FDR, and literally bolstered by every single Democrat since, all the way through LBJ. And it's focused highly in major cities all around the country. And the fact is, no level of national good policy from Republicans is going to beat an area where we haven't had a Republican elected in decades, in over 70 years in a lot of cases. So, and hey, all politics is local. You can't have a good policy at the national level that filters down through 60 layers of systemic racism. Systemic racism is really Marxism, cross-dressing as progressivism.
From local to national, let's talk about the international very quickly here. I'm curious your perspective on what's going on in Taiwan. You're a veteran, you've worn the uniform, you've worn the flag, and there's a movement out there that says, well, the United States shouldn't really put lives at risk any more than it has to. But should the United States intervene militarily if China moves essentially to take over Taiwan?
See, that's a hard one. Taiwan is so they are an ally, and we are supposed to have their back. And I believe that if we are going to go to war, that's what it should be for. However, at the same time, I also don't agree with wars of attrition. So if we go to war, we actually need to be there to win, not for politics. So the way I look at it, peace through strength, put ourselves in a position of strength around Taiwan and protect them from China. That way, if China is going to attack Taiwan, they have to attack through us. Then we actually have a reason to go to war. And if China wants to be that dumb that they want to start a war with the United States, well, you know what? I feel really bad for them.
All right, Julian, we got about a minute left, 45 seconds for this answer. Could be a lot of young candidates running in this race. Some of them have connections to Washington. You've got friends all over the place, but you're more local. So how do you win in a race where there are potentially people with a lot of D.C. connections out there?
Well, all politics is local. I've been down with GOP, the GOP meetings. I've been at all the events. I'm going to be in Concord for this National Voter Integrity rally they want a state audit, and I view it as my duty to be where the voters need me to be. So everyone in this state is going to have to make their decision, but I'm going to make sure you have to shake my hand, and you're going to have to make that decision after meeting me.
All right, Julian Aciard, we will see you out there on the campaign trail in New Hampshire. We appreciate your time on Close Up.
God bless.
All right.